In my previous video, I showed you a little bit about how to install and use the XTextureExtractor. But in this video, I'd like to share a few little details of how to create these files and how they're laid out. So what I'm going to do is leave Xplane here for just a moment. And what I want to show you now is the layout of how this works. Let's go to Open File Location and find our Xplane main folder here, and you can see that right here. We have an aircraft folder here, and I'm going to show you. Let's look at the Laminar aircraft, and let's look at the 737 Boeing 800 here. And I'm going to open that, and this is the aircraft folder here. Now under 3D Cockpit, well, first of all, you can see the name. There's the ACF file is the main aircraft file, and that title B738.ACF is important, so make note of that. We're going to use that to help name our file for the extractor file that we're going to make for XTextureExtractor. So we'll go to the 3D Cockpit, and we're going to look for this file. Now what happens is all the images that are on those displays are rendered to a texture file in Xplane while it's operating. And what Wayne Piekarski has been able to do is to extract those files, those images, those bits streams, and extract that image, divide it up, and put it in individual windows that we can use, as you saw last week on the other video. Now I'm going to open this panels. Most of the airplanes will have a panels, and then you can see this file that's rather dark. I'm going to open it with a paint program, paint.net in my case, and show you a little close-up of it. And you can see it's rather dark. You can see there's some images of stuff on there, but it's really hard to see. That's really not important. The main thing we have to do is to find the size. In this case, the image size is 2048 by 1024. 2048 wide by 1024. We need to make note of that. Okay? And then what we're going to do is just go ahead and close that. And we don't really need anything else right now, but I want to show you how that's used. Now, let's close this. Or actually, let's go back to our airplane folder here. Okay, so what I want to do is go back down to the resources folder in the plugins, and you see our plugin XTextureExtractor. Now, we're looking for a plane here, B738.ACF, which is the aircraft's official file name in Xplane, and we add a .tex. Now I'm going to open this with Notepad++. If you don't have it, it's free. You can open it. But what that'll allow you to do is see what the internal part of this file in a way that's readable. It'll wrap the file and make it look readable. So anyway, here's the format here. This first string of characters before the first space is the title that you can apply. You can make anything you want up, but this will appear in the windows when you open those little extractor windows in your application. Then we have, remember, the 2048 by 1024. Those are there, and then the file size 32856 seems to be a winner. Every one I've seen has that, so that must be the texture size 32K or something in standard texture size in Xplane. So anyway, that's the first line, the header that will tell it. And what it does is it's going to look through the textures for a 2048 by a 1024 file, and then when you press those little arrow button to cycle through the textures to find the right one, it's going to only look at those files. Now the next lines are pretty simple. They are the ND, the navigation display, and this is the coordinates, the part of that image that's going to be put into that window. this first number is the left, and then the top coordinate, and then the bottom, the right, and then the bottom. So it's left, top, right, bottom. And each one of these are there. So once we get this image, we'll be able to divide those up into the little pieces that we want to put in each. You can see even has that miscellaneous. It had that one file that had a whole bunch of pieces that could be further whinnied down if you wanted to use them. But the main windows, the ECASs and the ND and the HSI are here. So that's the whole thing. That's all there is to it. You just have to create a file like this and name it correctly. And as I said, it has to be the aircraft name plus the ACF text, and that will work. So there you go. That's how this works. So let's try an example, and let's pick an airplane. So let's go back to our airplanes, X-Plane 11 aircraft, and let's take the Laminar Research, the Cirrus SF50. Now I have a version someone made called a G2 that added a few features, but let's take the plain vanilla one, and we're going to open this, and we're going to go to the aircraft folder, and you can see there's the name of the file. I'm going to try to copy that so that I have that available when I won't make any typos. Copy that. Then I'm going to come up here to the 3D cockpit. There's our panels. I'm going to open the panels, and here it is. So let's see what the size is. Well, we can just do that right here. I'll open this just for the heck of it. Go into my other monitor, but I'll bring it over here. And you can see these little squares here are probably those little displays that are below, and we'll probably want to draw those out, extract those. But let's get the size here, and you can see it's 1024 by 1024. So that's what we're going to use in our little file. So let's go back to our X-Plane folder and go down to our resources and plugins. There's the plugins. And let's go to XTextureExtractor file. And let's just pick one of these. Let's use that one we just looked at because we're familiar with it. And let's say copy and then paste it. Okay. Now we should be able to paste. See if this will work. Control V. Well, it didn't. So let's type this in. The name of the file was capital CIRRUS, and it is case sensitive, and then SF50.acf.text, and there's our file. We're going to open this with Notepad, and let's change this. We'll call this let's call it the Vision Jet. And remember, it was 1024 by 1024. We'll leave that 3285. And there was, as I recall, there was 3 of those little. Of course, the G1000's already come out. So let's just go ahead and put this in here. Let's say MFD1, and we'll just make it something like, just so we're sure we can see what we're doing. Let's call it 500. I'm sorry, it should start off 0, 0. So 0 for the for the left, 0 for the top, and we'll say 500, 500. And let's get rid of the rest of these in here. Again, remember that each one of these names, the name for the aircraft that you want to be displayed and the name that you want displayed in the window, have to be one word. We could call it MDF_1 or whatever, but it has to be one word, and then there has to be a space between each of these elements. Okay, so let's save that. And of course, we saved it right into that same folder that we were in, and we can close that, and you can see we have whoops, it renamed it for me here. It's because I had the same Let me delete this one. I had the same file name, so let's get rid of that little thing so it reads correctly. Oops. Okay, so it's Cirrus SF50 ACF text. Okay, and I'm just going to go to that airplane and make sure I got that right since I didn't paste it correctly. Okay, and we go to the Cirrus SF50, and it's Cirrus SF50.acf. So it looks good, and we put the .tex on the end. So we should be able to start this up and see what's going on. So let's close this. Let's start X-Plane up again. And I'm going to pause here for a minute while it's being loaded. Okay, so here we are. Now you can see we successfully created a window right here, and this is the window that we made. It's clipping out the top 500 by 500 upper left corner of that window. Obviously we're not looking at anything useful, but what we're shooting for is to recreate these three. Of course these two can be exported just by clicking on them, right? And we can export those windows. We can export those windows out by just clicking on them, and that works already in X-Plane. But we want to export maybe these three little windows here, let's say. So we're going to start clicking our little arrow here, and hopefully we're going to see eventually we're going to see a texture that looks familiar. And usually you click fast enough, you'll manage to go one past it and have to cycle around again. So it's a good idea to keep an idea on the number as you're going so that you're not caught off guard. You can see there's all sorts of weird textures here for all sorts of scenery and everything else. All these, there we go. That looks familiar. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to click this little button that says debug, because we know we have the right texture now. We're going to click debug. Okay, and now we can quit X-Plane, and we're going to go back to the X-Plane folder, and we're going to look down here in the main folder, and you see where it says texture save. I'm going to open that with my editing program, paint.net. Okay, so now here's our 1024 by 1024, and now you can see it's divided into, you can see those three windows are stacked up there. So what we need to do is we need to take our cursor, our selection cursor, I'm in paint.net, whatever program you use, you'll know how to do this. But you want to come down here and just kind of get an idea of what the coordinates of that first one is. And you can see that it's about 298 wide, and it's about 300 pixels high, and about 487 wide, 47 by 300. I'm going to go down here to this one, and kind of looks like they're all even, and that's about 600. And this one down here, the bottom is about, it's 900. So 300 high on each one of them. And they look to be about 487 wide. 47 wide and 892. Okay, so that's what we need. 487 wide by 300 each high. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to this file that we created in the plugins, in the texture file, and we're going to say, where is that sucker? Right here. We're going to open that with Notepad. So here we are looking at our file. Let's edit this now. We said that we started at the upper left corner at 0, 0. Now the file goes over to 487, right? We said it was 47 wide, and the bottom would be, for the first piece, would be 300. So we'll call the next one MFD2. And that the left will again be 0. The top, in this case, will be 1 below where we started the other one. So it'll start at 301. The width again is 487 still. And the bottom will be 600. And we'll make the last one MFD 3. We'll start at 0 on the left. Start at 601. .487 is the same width, and it'll end at 900. So here we go. We have our 3 pieces. The first one comes down 300, then that one comes down to 600, starting at the bottom of the next one, and so on. And that's how you create the file. Just save that. And now we're going to start up X-Plane again and see what happens. Okay, so now we see we have our 3 windows here before. Let's look at what we have. We have MFD1, you could say, and it has Vision Jet listed for the, and we'll have to resize that to fit, but and then MFD2 and MFD3. Now we got to step through these textures to find the right one, and I forget what number we had to go to. It's quite a few. I should have paid attention. But there's still no guarantee it's going to be the same the next time through. It can change from session to session because things may change, things load in different orders and so on. Especially if you're changing a different airport with different textures on the scenery and so on. This is where I say you got to slow down here because if you're not careful, you'll step right through it. Okay, so here we go. So here's our 3 files. Now let's take this one and try to resize it till it looks about right. I don't even, looks like about like that, so a little bit higher aspect ratio. And you could take a screen capture here. If you're going to build a bezel and show this through there, you can just resize it till it fits perfectly. And the same thing with our MFD number 2 and MFD number 3. And the cool thing is, I mean, you can make these things as big as you want. So you can put them on a very big display, small display, and so on. But it's really cool that you can do that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Load. I'm going to save. And you notice the first time you click it, it just selects the button. So the second time, now it says Save 1. So now I can move these babies around or do whatever if I restart. In fact, I'll show you how you can restart this thing. I'm going to move all of them. Let's close a couple windows. Okay, and then we come up here to the plugins and plug in admin, and we can just go to get this out of the way. We'll go to XTextureExtractor and just disable it, and then re-enable it, and you notice they all come back to the same place. Unfortunately, we got to go through those. Every time you start this thing, you're going to have to find the right magic number here to find the right textures. And I'm hoping that Wayne is going to develop some way to avoid having to do that. But in the meantime, it's fairly powerful, and as I said, if you can create a mask and fit this into a bezel that's made in, for example, made in Air Manager with operable knobs and buttons, then you could even put a if it was a touchscreen, you could even put a clear Air Manager buttons above it and make it function. So there's a lot you could do with this, but it's pretty cool, and I wanted to share it with you. So that's the basic operation: how to search and find the right panel, to find the right size, width and height, so that it's going to be searching for the right texture when it loads up, the right size texture, and then to take that and to open it up, to open the right texture, to hit the debug button to get that picture, and that's saved into the main directory of X-Plane. It says texture save, as you recall, and then after you have that, you go into your paint program and you cut it into little pieces and figure out the coordinates of the left top, right bottom, and put those into that file, edit that file you've created. And I will remind you that it's important that it be named exactly right. It has to be the aircraft's title dot ACF that's in the aircraft's folder in X-Plane, and then add the .tex on the end. And if it's labeled exactly right, these will show up. You can resize them, and as I said, once you have them resized, positioned, when you load them, they'll always come back to the right location. So they'll load up to the right location, and if you move them around or accidentally missize something or change the aspect ratio or whatever, you can just hit the load button. And everything's right back where it belongs. So if you're going to be using this repeatedly in a cockpit, it'll save all that information. So that's it for XTextureExtractor. If you like the video, be sure to like, subscribe, send any comments below, and support Wayne any way you can, because I think he's got a great idea here, and I just love innovative things in the sim industry. Just help our hobby get better and better. So thanks a lot for watching. I'll be back soon, hopefully, when I see something else cool to share with you. Thanks a lot.